and let us all do we can to build a better future. So let's move on now to the great fight that's happening with Amazon and the union and the people there that are fighting for their rights there. We have 4 videos from Case Study QB. I want to play them all in their entirety, and at least here, I'm willing to give corporate media some leeway. They're having a conversation about why there's a lack of opportunities for working class citizens in this country. Let's play that first video.
Strategy here from Amazon. Sarcasm and taunting by a top executive when there is just so much at stake for them, and they're already on the wrong side of lawmakers in Congress.
I do not think this is a winning strategy for Amazon at all. They're playing by Twitter rules, appealing to people on Twitter. And I do not think that is the core constituency here. And I think they're losing this battle hard. And whether they lose it in Alabama, I don't know. But I think it is just a matter of time before unions become a bigger deal, not just in Amazon, but throughout the tech sector. Because I think the issue is less about compensation than it is about onerous work rules that really dehumanize the people who work in these large warehouses, particularly during the rush seasons around holidays and various other gifting moments. And so I think that if I were Amazon, I'd be looking for a different communication strategy.
Casey, here's my unpopular opinion / observation, maybe more of an observation. Warehouse jobs in general are hard, right? I mean, a lot of times from where we sit, sometimes, in the East Coast, in these cities, we don't like to think about that, but they are hard. And if the conditions at Amazon warehouses were as bad as some of the Democrats are trying to paint them, this union vote wouldn't even be an issue. Everybody would vote to organize. Then I also look online, I look at Indeed, and I look at the worker rankings of the job from Amazon workers, warehouse workers, 3.6 out of 5. Walmart workers, 3.5 out of 5. It's actually lower, and we're talking tens of thousands of reviews on each. Costco's pretty high, 4.1 out of 5, but Walgreens, 3.6 out of 5, the same as Amazon. Now square that for me. If Amazon is that bad compared to everybody else with tens of thousands of reviews, why are we seeing those rankings?
It's a good question. I think what we've seen from the reporting on the ground is that the situation in Bessemer, Alabama actually is pretty divided, and there are some workers there who are really...
Okay, just real quick before, because I know we want to give our commentary on this, but I want to acknowledge something that must be addressed. I worked at a warehouse. I worked at Costco. There's a big fundamental difference between Amazon warehouse and Costco warehouse, and that is we have more benefits and more protections. That's a real truth about the difference between an Amazon worker working at the warehouse and a Costco worker. When I was struck with pneumonia, my employers told me to go home because I was sick. I didn't know I had pneumonia at the time, but thankfully I had medical benefits and I was able to be taken care of, and I had that addressed and fixed. And then when I had a relative that was severely injured that I had to take care of them, guess what? I was actually able to take some time off from work, and able to help my family out, get my relative back in shape so that they can, continue living their lives. Amazon doesn't offer that to its workers. Amazon has its workers pee in bottles. Amazon has its truck drivers wearing adult diapers so they make less stops. Amazon is having its workers work in crowded facilities. All the while, all of them are being exposed to COVID-19. And Amazon has some of its own employees conducting the COVID-19 tests, even though they are not medically trained to do so.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's happening. And the thing is, reading a review on Indeed, okay, that's fine, buddy, that you are, but I wouldn't cite that as a complete source. Maybe you should be looking at other research materials besides Indeed. Let's play that next video.
Amazon would just sort of, pull up stakes and get out of town if the union were successful. So it's not a sure thing that it's going to pass. But I also think that, you don't have to have the worst job in the world to want a union, right? Like, economic precarity is a defining feature of life for too many Americans. And if you're working in a low or medium skill job and you're looking at the coming wave of automation that's about to transform every workplace, there are a lot of reasons why you might want to be able to bargain collectively. So, all the reporting I've read on the ground in Amazon or on Amazon suggests that a union is something that these workers probably want to have to protect themselves.
And maybe they do, Roger. I'm not really trying to argue for that one way or the other, but I'm old enough to remember a decade or so ago when Walmart was the boogeyman. It seems like there's a new one, and maybe that distracts from the underlying issues about pay, about benefits, about worker education and advancement that perhaps are needed across the economy, not just within one particular company.
John, that's a fair point, but I would also note that in many of the communities where these warehouses are based, the warehouse is by far the largest employer. So that it's not like people have options. And I really strongly agree with Casey's point here that in this country where we tie health insurance to employment and where we give all the power to the employers to misclassify workers as contractors when in fact they really should be employees in order not to give them health care, you have a very little safety net in these communities. And so it is legitimate for a worker to vote against a union out of fear that they will lose their job or out of fear that the warehouse will be moved. And that fear is the problem. So I really strongly endorse what Casey just said about why it's in the interest of these workers to have some level of protection and why I think the government is likely to treat workers across the entire economy with more respect going forward than has been the case over the last 30 or 40 years.
Roger, you make a good point in tying this in with all the conversations and regulation around gig workers, but I'm curious whether this issue, which is about Amazon and warehouse workers, really speaks to larger questions.
All right, let's play that. Let's pull up a next video again with
So far, I'm actually not unhappy with this conversation. I mean, it's not the best conversation, but it's a conversation.
It's something that I think a lot of people need to hear about, just the current state of our economy and our country right now.
I'm just going to say, congratulations, TV news. You did something.
Yeah, let's go ahead and play this next video.
Of more than one. And if that's the case, we really need to rethink how the economy is structured. And a big part of what Biden has done with the American Recovery Act is to acknowledge that with a temporary move to try to help all the people harmed by it. And I just believe that we're going to have to get accustomed as investors to a slightly different balance of the benefits of the economy, because the pandemic just showed that the other balance just leaves way too many people in a catastrophic situation, people that we desperately need in order for the rest of the economy to operate.
Mm-hmm. We will soon see how that dynamic continues to play out. Ballots start to be counted on March 30th at that Alabama Amazon warehouse. Thank you guys so much, Casey and Roger.
Of more than one.
Okay, so look, I'm glad that we were able to really hear this conversation play out and really talk about the economic situation that's impacting a lot of people all across the country. Look, there was a point, Daniel, you bring this up, that the United States used to build things. We used to make things. We had communities that were built around warehouse facilities, industry. And the thing is, ever since NAFTA, ever since these big trade agreements that we're doing worldwide, a lot of these plants and facilities have been shut down. And this has been a huge death blow to a lot of communities. It's just not, these small communities, but there's also large cities that are dealing with this too, where Amazon is the only place, the only option for a lot of people to work at. And the thing is, Amazon has been able to capitalize on this fact that there's a lack of opportunities. And so a lot of people are afraid to speak out. A lot of people are afraid to step up. And the thing is, we have politicians that haven't been fighting for our rights for quite some time. If you compare the United States policies towards workers towards other countries like in Germany or in Britain or in Canada, it's like almost night and day. And I'm not saying that those countries are perfect, but workers' rights are more respected, more so than here in the United States. And look, I want to just bring up Costco. Costco is probably one of the few companies that actually at least gives its workers benefits. They're giving their workers a $16 wage increase. $16. It's above the $15 minimum wage increase, but they're doing it. They give them medical care, dental care, a 401k, a few other things here too. But I mean, there was a point where workers were taken care of in this country, where again, if you treat your workers right, they're going to work hard for you. But now, ever since then, we've had companies and corporations constantly squash us, push us down, and walk over us, all the while our politicians are accepting bribes from these corporations. So it's a long overdue that we talk about unions, that we talk about co-ops, that we actually build something so that people aren't working until they're 90 years old. I mean, let's bring up Walmart. When you see these senior citizens in their 80s and 90s being Walmart greeters, really? Work until you're dead? You know, everyone's biggest regret in life, especially when they're dying here in the United States, I wish I didn't work so much. I wish I didn't work as hard. I wish I could have enjoyed life. That's the thing a lot of Americans are saying now. And because of the lack of opportunities, we also have this growing opioid crisis too, where again, it's hurting us and we're getting nothing in return. All of us right now are struggling day in, day out. In this pandemic, the corporations got more money. Jeff Bezos became richer and he profited off of our pain. All the while we had corporate media praising workers like Amazon or retail workers, saying that they're essential, and then how quick and easily they forgot. Daniel, what's the final word?
Yeah, this is the standard that we're in with the U.S. that we're even fighting to get. We have states where you don't have to pay to be in unions, and I'm still at the point where I think that we really should be moving to co-ops. But you really can't co-op with something like Amazon, so a union, of course, makes more sense. Because Kit's right. It's like, sure, they're paying them above the minimum wage of $15 an hour, but warehouse workers in the past have made $25 an hour. I know their average is much higher than what Amazon's being paid. Yeah, and I don't think you should be rewarded for knocking out all the competition in the town and then saying, well, now we pay the most of anyone else because there's no one else to pay. I want to remind everyone, Amazon has put out of business thousands and thousands and thousands. I wonder what the ratio is for every Amazon worker working for $15 in a sorting facility. How many 10s or 20s of business owners are out of a job? That's a thing that doesn't get talked about. And by the way, when you make companies smaller in that sense, the average pay is higher. Like, I know that they're always like, oh man, if we raise the minimum wage, small businesses would go out of business. When small businesses usually pay above minimum wage far more than large corporations do. So it's all a thing. If you're paying, so it's a failure, and it's where we're at.
Exactly. I think as a final word for this story, again, the workers in Alabama, but also Amazon workers across this country should be working together to unionize and make this happen. And we need to push forward and actually keep on building something here in this country.